marks.
On your mark.
Get set.
Get set.
Now ready.
Ready, go.
Provocative, engaging, and usually quite a lady.
Okay, they're asking for it.
Deborah, go.
I've been paying quite a bit of attention lately to the news about crime. Not that I'm obsessed with crime, although I do watch a lot of Forensic Files, even though that's an old show, but it's just fascinating to me. But I've been watching a lot of stories and reading a lot about crime because there seems to be a lot of crime. More than ever before. That's just the way it feels to me. So I went and I started doing some research on some of these statistics. And at least according to the FBI, certain crimes have gone down. Certain crimes over the past couple of years, they've gone down. I've seen articles where it's been said that people, they imagine there's more crime than anything. That crime is not really as bad as they say it is, or they feel that it is. I saw a piece on CNN that basically said it's a lot of politics that makes people think that crime is going up. It's partisan rhetoric. Well, I don't think it's just partisan rhetoric because I did find an article that said that, actually crime is going down, except for murder. Now, of course, I thought, well, murder is a crime. And he said, murder is a very specific crime. So if you're going to talk about that, you have to use specifics. And I was thinking to myself, wait a minute. You're telling me that despite looking at the news, that I'm just really imagining it? That it's not as bad as it appears to be? Or how about trying to find some statistics from the FBI? They don't have really updated statistics. And when I say updated, I want month-to-month statistics. And I know they're perfectly capable of gathering that kind of data, even though they have to get it from cities and states, small towns and things like that. Even if they did it just quarterly, I would love to see more recent data. A lot of this stuff is hard to find. So I'm just curious. I was wondering, is it just me, or do you also feel that crime is going up? And I mean, we can feel the way we feel, and it's always good to be accurate. But I'm not even certain that the people who are saying that, you know what, well, yeah, there's more of this type of crime, but the other types of crime, they're really dropping. I'm not so certain that they're being accurate. But one thing I am certain of is that something is going on. Seriously, something is going on. We are seeing, and I'm just going to use Chicago for an example. Despite crime numbers having dropped from the 1980s, that was like the serious Wild West in Chicago, and things got better. But in the last 3-4 years, since 2021, that's what most articles say. We've seen some spikes, but yeah, in the last year or so, some of these numbers have dropped. Last year in Chicago, over 3,000 shootings. Over 3,000 shootings in Chicago alone. Over 630, and I know it was higher than that because the 630 number last year with regard to murders, that number was for up to November 1st. So you still had all of November and all of December. So you know those numbers went up. Hundreds of murders in 1 year in Chicago. So many children killed. I think I read 54, 55 children, small children shot and killed. I don't recall a time like this. I really don't. You turn on your television, and I know a lot of people say, I don't watch the news anymore. I don't watch the news, Deborah, for the very thing you're talking about. I don't want to see all of this bad news. I don't want to see throngs of people running into stores, taking whatever they want, and going on about their business. I don't want to see young men knocking older women on the ground to take their purse or to take their cars, pulling people out of their cars. We see all of this kind of stuff. So in my humble opinion, and what's more important to me, even if they say that the stats are just not bearing out the fear that many people have, and not everybody has fear. I don't even think I have true fear. I have more concern. I'm concerned for my safety, but it's not fear. Fear is something very, very different. Fear to me causes people to limit their movement. They don't want to go certain places. They don't stay out past a certain hour. And that's probably smart anyways, but they don't, if it's dark, they're in the house. Just like when you were a kid, when your mom said, when the street lights come on, I want to see you in front of the house or in the house. Well, a lot of people are living like that. And you can't not blame, especially if we're talking about older people, you can't blame them. They don't want to go shopping in the evening. They don't want to be out and about by themselves at night. And for a lot of people, they don't even want to do that in the daytime. They don't want to travel alone. There are lots of people now, they don't want to ride public transit anymore. Why? Because there's so much crime on public transportation. But I'm talking about all of this for a very specific reason, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But first, I want you to take a listen to this report. This has to do with crime over the Memorial Day weekend. And yes, we know Chicago played an important role in those numbers, but interestingly, crime was happening, and I'm talking about just shootings all over the country. Take a listen.
Tonight, gun violence and bloodshed, a stain on the unofficial start to summer. In Massachusetts, chaos Sunday night. 2 shootings on Revere Beach, just an hour apart. Boston police attributing the violence to 2 massive fights that escalated. Ohio and Wisconsin not spared by the violence. Columbus police say 7 were injured after a shooting during a party in the southeast area of the city. 3 killed and 9 injured in weekend shootings across Milwaukee, according to police. Mass shootings across the country, defined by the Gun Violence Archive as 4 or more people injured or killed, reaching 257 incidents so far, just 150 days into the year. In Chicago, newly elected Mayor Brandon Johnson, hoping to get in front of any issues, announced public safety measures ahead of the weekend.
Our public safety agencies have plans in place for the weekend and summer months to ensure that everyone can enjoy our city in peace.
But just one day later, Telemundo's Chicago cameras capturing shots fired between beachgoers at the city's North Avenue Beach on opening day.
North Avenue Beach is now closed. I need everybody to exit the sand and the water.
Chicago police say at least 37 people were injured across the city and 8 killed, including 35-year-old William Hare.
He was my older brother and also my best friend. He was caring about everybody he met, very friendly, very talkative, and a great listener.
Investigators say Hare was found shot in the chest on the sidewalk in the Lakeview neighborhood.
The car pulled up, 2 people came out, there were 2 gunshots, 1 from each person. They did not ask for money, they did not ask for anything. They shot at him for no reason. 1 bullet struck him in the chest, and his best friend tried to save his life, and he died.
Valerie Castro joins us now in studio. Valerie, you've been monitoring the shootings that happened this weekend, but even in the last few hours, more have happened. What are you seeing?
Ellison, the numbers continue to go up and now include cities like Houston, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. At last check, according to the Gun Violence Archive, just today, more than 30 people have been injured by gunfire and at least 14 have been killed.
All right, Valerie, thank you.
So the question is it just my imagination? Maybe you're thinking the same thing. Is it just your imagination? Or are things really happening here? I mean, is crime actually going up? And I'd say yes, it definitely is going up. It's certainly getting closer to home for a whole lot of people. But what's behind this? I mean, is it that criminals have just gotten a whole lot smarter? They know how to circumvent this system. They know how to beat and outwit attorneys and prosecutors. And that's how they get out on the street and reoffend and go out and, commit more crimes.
So long, suckers.
Is that what's really happening here? These street smart punks. They've got it down. I actually know that that's not the reason why. There's another reason, and the reason why we're seeing a lot of this happening is that there is a fresh new crop of progressive prosecutors. That's right, progressive prosecutors. And they have a whole different value system, belief system than the average person. Plain and simple. There are scores of them. Some of them have been in office longer than others, but when they come into office, and this is something that I think is fairly easy to track. When you look at some of these progressive prosecutors, be they district attorneys or state's attorneys, and then you look at the level of crime in the areas in which they serve, there are spikes. And some of the more prominent ones, some you'll know, some you may not know, and I won't name them all because there literally are scores of them. But in Chicago, we'll do Chicago first, there is Kim Foxx. That's right, Kim Foxx. Make no mistake about it. Kim Foxx, her hands have been at work in terms of a lot of things. Since Kim Foxx, if you go into a store, you can steal up to $999 worth of merchandise, and you can do an I-bond and walk. Before Kim Foxx, it was $99. When you got to $100, they were taking your butt to jail. But Kim Foxx felt like, we've got a problem in our society where poor people, Black and brown people, they are singled out. They are identified for stricter prosecution. And many of them, they can't afford to pay the bail money, so they suffer in silence in jail. Now, she didn't say those exact words, but she said words very similar. But she's not the only one. In Philadelphia, Larry Krasner. Larry Krasner, seriously, a real piece of work. Here's a guy, he put together a list of police, and he called the list the do not call list. In other words, after police have made an arrest and if they go to court, he did not want prosecutors to call this list of police officers to testify. I wonder why. Well, you could say because he knows that they lie. Or it could be that they make lots of arrests, that they are real crime fighters, and that they're going to do their duty as police officers and just as citizens to get the criminal behind bars. And that's by testifying. He didn't want them to testify. No. This guy had so many outrageous reforms. You know what happened? He was actually impeached. That's right. Now, some say that was just politics. That was Republicans out to get a hard-fighting, anti-mass incarceration guy. Oh, he was a lot more than that. Although the impeachment vote was something like 107 to 85, and I remember this one, a judge stepped in. And a judge said, well, guys, we can't let this stand. You can't go and impeach somebody because you don't like their policies. Even if the policies are hurting the community, even if it's letting dangerous criminals back out on the street, you can't impeach a guy for that. And then there's Rachel Rollins. You may have seen Rachel Rollins. She's out of Suffolk County, Massachusetts. And she's the woman, every blue moon you may see her on TV. And she has this really stern look, and she has her hair in this tight bun. And some of the policies that she put forward as a prosecutor, she wanted to decriminalize a bunch of crimes. She said these were nuisance crimes. These were small crimes, and we shouldn't have to waste time going after them. And that included drug dealers or people who had drugs with the intent to distribute. That's right. I said drug dealers. That's exactly what it is. Somebody with drugs with an intent to distribute. Oh, don't waste time with that guy. Don't waste time with that woman. Send her on her way. Those and so many other things, I do invite you to go and read some of the policies. But guess what? It was just a couple of weeks ago when Rachel Rollins announced that she was going to resign. Yeah. No, not because she was harming the citizens there with all of these soft on crime policies. No, she got out just in time because she's been accused of some political corruption. Like leaking Department of Justice information to the wrong people, like her allies, her political allies. Whew. Kim Foxx has announced she's not going to give it another go. She won't be running for office again. Whew. And who else is out there? Kim Gardner. She's out of St. Louis. Kim Gardner. She doesn't show up for work so much that they had a few trials. Prosecutors didn't show up to court. She didn't send anybody. She wasn't there. And criminals just walk.
So long, suckers.
So what can they do? There's nobody to prosecute them. This is all about decriminalizing a lot of things. This is also about reducing incarceration. There's a lot of this happening. I mean, a whole lot of this happening. Remember Chesa Boudin out of San Francisco? He literally turned out 25% of the jail population. Yeah, that was during COVID. I want to say that up front. But that was his intent all along. Chesa Boudin, imagine this now. We're talking San Francisco. And I don't think there's anybody in the world that believes that that's a conservative place. Only 8% believe that he was doing a good job. The overwhelming majority felt that this guy is way too liberal. His policies are going to kill us, literally kill us. He believed in what he called de-incarceration. He was doing everything within his power to get people out of jail. Now, if he was some sort of defense attorney, you know what I would say? Hey, I applaud you. That's your job. This guy is a prosecutor. When it's all said and done, his job was to protect the citizens, lock the bad guys up. That's not where he was coming from at all. They recalled him. Whew. Very liberal San Francisco, they recalled him, and he's now gone. This, I don't believe, is a coincidence. And I know it for a fact because there are literally hundreds of organizations that have a very different worldview when it comes to crime. They know crime. They know what crime is. It's just that they have a different view of what we as a society should be doing with people that commit crimes. I was just going through a list, and it takes time to go through their websites and look at the personnel and see what their backgrounds are, the leadership, and then see what their agenda happened to be. Some of these organizations stood out more than others. The four that just jumped out at me, according to what they say their goals are and what they are actually implementing and how much money they're putting behind district attorneys and state's attorneys. That's right. One organization is called Vera Institute of Justice. It falls under the banner of vera.org. There was another one, Prison Policy Initiative. And then there was Equal Justice Initiative. That one comes up under the ACLU. And then Fair and Just Prosecution. That one was very interesting to me because they were, I think, a lot more open in terms of stating just right there on their website. We give money to this new breed of progressive prosecutors. They share our view on what needs to happen. And they also work with universities and colleges and experts in what many of them call reimagining prosecution. And I want you to pay attention to certain words. I call them buzzwords. They use specific words, specific phrases. You'll find them on their websites. You'll find those words and phrases being used by the very prosecutors, by the very district attorneys and state's attorneys that they support, that they help fund their campaigns to. So what are some of these words and phrases? And you just think about it. Have you been hearing these words maybe over the past few years? over-policing, sentencing reform, excessive punishment, mass incarceration. That's kind of an older one, but they use it a lot. Reimagining prosecution, reimagining policing, eliminating cash bail, restorative justice, smart on crime. That was one of Rachel Rollins's favorite phrases, because I'm smart on crime. Oh, you're so smart. The smartest thing you know how to do is just to let criminals go. Well, in their worldview, that really is being smart on crime. So I went through a number of these organizations, as I mentioned, through their websites, and I kept seeing similar goals. So I kind of just pared them all down. And these are the most common ones. Goal 1, capping sentences at 20 years, including for the most serious offenses. I didn't add that. That's on their website. Shifting sentences for all other offenses downward. Decriminalize some acts, and these are what they call low-level crimes. And it's not just them. I guess these would be under statutes, low-level crimes. Minor drug offenses, including possession, drunk driving, shoplifting, petty theft, minor or simple assault, trespassing, vandalism, minor sex crimes, including solicitation and prostitution and indecent exposure, resisting arrest, dismantling racist criminal justice system, shrinking probation and parole, ending fines and fees, not seeking pretrial detention if a defendant misses court, if the defendant subsequently reports to court the next time. And they actually use Kim Foxx as an example of one of their prosecutors or state's attorneys that has done this. And decriminalize drug arrests with the intent to distribute. That was Rachel Rollins out of Massachusetts. My point that I am making, none of this is coincidental. I hear conversations, you hear conversations, you're raising questions, I've raised questions such as, why are people getting out of jail so easily? Why aren't they prosecuting someone for that? How is it that they only stayed in jail for this amount of time? Well, there are your reasons right there. There are a ton of organizations. You don't see them. You don't see them on the news, but they're there and they are well funded and they have an agenda. Make no mistake about it. Well-funded organizations with an agenda. And you may say, well, there are lots of well-funded organizations with agendas. Look at the American Cancer Society. Look at the Girl Scouts of America. Well, this is different. We see these organizations appeal to the public for funding, donate to our cause. These organizations that I'm talking about, the ones that are behind the radical change in our laws as it relates to crime, they don't have to ask you for anything. There are very deep-pocketed people who agree with this agenda. And the thing that is most disturbing, aside from the fact that these ideals, if you will, are wreaking havoc on the society, you know what happens when they decide that we have to find a way to get these poor little people out of prison. They're black and brown people. And I say that often. I know I've said that a few times, black and brown. Yes, I know plenty of whites commit crimes, but they don't ever mention whites. They just play on the black and the brown. We have to find a way to end this structural racism, end this systematic racism. One of the things that disturbs me most about all of this is that as criminals go through the revolving doors of our penal system, guess where they go? They go back to their communities, the communities that they were destroying, the communities where on a given weekend, 8, 10, 12 people are killed, shot and killed, where homes are broken into on a regular basis, just regularly. I mean, gang banging, drug dealing, child molestation, on and on and on. And I'm not even talking just about thugs that are out on the street, but even the criminals who deal with individualized crimes where nobody knows their evil deeds, but they get into the justice system, and groups such as the ones I've been talking about, they are working fervently to get these people back out on the street. Yes, they are. I wonder how they would respond if they knew that as those criminals leave the system, that they would move into their communities. Because as you look into these websites and you see who these directors are and these policy people are, many of them Yale educated, Harvard educated, Brown educated, very, very good backgrounds educationally. I'm certain they don't live in some crime-ridden neighborhood. Why don't they put those people in their communities? Well, of course, that'll never happen. That's the very reason why they are so detached from it all. It doesn't personally affect them. What it does, however, it meets the needs, the desires, the goals of their funders. So who are their funders? I'm going to leave that one for another episode. But make no mistake about it, they have people with very deep pockets who see this as an agenda. And just a point that needs to be made. This is not just happening in the U.S. It's happening in Europe. It's happening specifically in Great Britain. I mentioned that because a couple of the organizations that are on the sheet, they have offices and operations in England. So this is almost a global thing. It's as though they're tearing down society. They're creating so much chaos. This is chaotic. This is completely chaotic. And something else happens when you have a system, when you have people that are incentivizing crime. It causes those who are committing crimes actually to become totally disrespectful of the law. Yeah, they're disrespectful in the fact that they've broken the law, but it just becomes pervasive. They don't care. They know they're going to get off anyways. They'll do a little bit of time, maybe. So this is a lot deeper than we see on the surface. It's more than just turning on your 10 o'clock news and hearing reports of this type of crime or that type of crime. Because rarely will they ever go behind the scenes. Rarely will they ever dig deeper. And I mean our media. They're not digging deep and asking the important questions. Why are so many prosecutors across the country choosing to incentivize crime? Why is this happening? And I think we, citizens, we have to be inquisitive enough. We just can't sit back and say, well, at least it's not happening in my neighborhood, because I can assure you, eventually it will happen in your neighborhood. And I'm going to use Illinois as a good example of that. Governor Pritzker's Safety Act, that doesn't just affect Cook County. That doesn't just affect Chicago. That affects the state as a whole, which is why I think it was like 102 DAs, liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, they all got together and they stood and they said, we have to reject this thing. This is insane. I think out of 102, only 2 stood with it. And, they kicked it up to court, to the higher court in the state. I'm telling you, something very insidious is going on here. One of the ways in which these organizations are so successful, and they are clearly successful, is because they understand language. Language is critical. So they appeal to the sensitivities that decent people have about racism. They know that decent people don't want racism. And certainly people who have been impacted directly or even indirectly by racism, they don't want that. So we keep hearing words like disparity, inequity, racism, racism, racism. Yes, then people automatically say, well, you know what? We really do have to do something about this. And I'm on board with that. But what we don't need to do is, as they say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we don't want to do is to reduce penalties so much that a criminal feels, so what if I get arrested? Big damn deal. And that's what a lot of them feel today. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I don't live with my head in the clouds somewhere. I do know that there are problems in our justice system. I understand that there are people who have been wrongfully accused, wrongfully prosecuted, and wrongfully sentenced to prison. I understand that. Is that the majority? H-E double toothpicks, no. Most people who are in prison should be there. They've committed crimes. But I was thinking about the case of Alton Mills. Now, you may not remember Alton Mills, but he was a guy who was a drug dealer. And if you listen to a lot of the people who were supporting his sentence being commuted, they said, well, he was just a low-level drug dealer. He was only 24 years old. He shouldn't be spending life in prison. Well, there were more details to that, but what do details matter? Anyways, President Obama, he did commute Alton Mills's sentence, and he was released from prison. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, he touted the virtues of Alton Mills. And he talked about how this guy, he could have been spending the rest of his life behind bars. He was just a low-level drug dealer. But, thanks to President Obama, he's now out, and now he enjoys his family. He's a productive member of society. What a great guy he is. And then there was Senator Elizabeth Warren. She got on Twitter and she was talking about, what a wonderful day it is. You see, if you're poor, if you're black, or if you're brown and you get caught with a little bitty teeny weeny bit of drugs, you're going to do life in prison. But if you're a rich white guy and you're dealing drugs and you're working with the cartel, all you do is pop some money out and you are going to go to your bed and sleep good that night. Really? Is that what's really happening out here? These sweet little angels who, I don't know, somebody just walks up to them and say, hey kid, go over there and sell that. And then when they get arrested, they get life in prison? Is that how that works? No, I don't think so. It's pretty darn hard to go to jail for drugs for your first offense. It's really hard for the feds to come down on you if you don't have a huge quantity of drugs. Now, there were stiffer sentences for crack cocaine, as there should have been. It is far more addictive than a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's another subject. You're not going to convince me that this was just some sweet little kid twiddling his thumbs at the age of 24. Hey, I don't have any food to eat. Hey, I got a family to feed. Hey, I got to get out here and sell these drugs. Well, we can go on about that, but here's the real point. There was a recent shooting on Interstate 57, I-57, and 3 people were shot. And one woman, she was shot and she was on life support. She was brain dead and she died. Her name was Linda Chapman, 39-year-old woman. And her killer's name is Alton Mills. That's a guy who, his sentence was commuted by President Barack Obama. He's the guy, Dick Durbin, Senator Warren, just a kid, just one of those poor black or brown kids with not a lot of hope in life. He doesn't need to be behind bars. Well, you know what? I bet Miss Chapman's family wishes that he had stayed behind bars. Sadly, Alton Mills' story is not unique. It's not unique in the country and certainly not in Chicago. The Chicago Tribune, they got their hands on some data regarding bail reform in Cook County, and it was very interesting. They were able to identify 21 defendants who were released after bail reform, and they were later accused of murder. But let's get back to these words that you keep hearing. And if you listen real closely, if you listen to a lot of politicians today, they want to tell us that, we are, as a nation, we're just over policing. We're just over incarcerating. And we're doing it on the backs of black and brown Americans. Here's the thing. When you look at the population numbers, 13% for blacks, brown, I didn't look at their numbers, but because those numbers are constantly changing, we got a big influx coming in right now. So I didn't want to try to calculate. But the point being, the rate of crime committed by people who are black, like I am, and people who are brown, those numbers are pretty significant for the population size. It stands to reason that if you have more encounters with the police, things are going to happen, because not everybody, when encountered by a police, when a police approaches them, not everybody is going to say, "What can I do for you, officer? What are you stopping me for, officer?" Not everybody that comes in contact with the police, when the police says, "I need you to step out of the car," is going to say, "Yes, sir." Nope, not everybody, when the police stops them, is going to say, "Officer, I don't have anything on me." And when the officer says, "Let me see your license and your insurance," not everybody's going to say, "Please give me just a moment." Nope. A whole lot of people are going to say, "F you. Get the F out of my face." A lot of them are just going to run. Some of them may pull a gun. You see, that's the little story that they don't like to talk about. And I'm not even saying that that's most, but when you talk about this unfair police practice, and I know driving while black, it happens. And it often happens when people have blackened windows, darkened windows where they can't see, license plates missing, on and on and on. The point that I'm making is not all of anything, but these very progressive politicians and very progressive district attorneys and very progressive state's attorneys, they want to convince us that the only way to change the society is to stop putting so many black and brown people in jail. Stop sending so many to prison. We need to cap at 20 years, no matter what a person does, even for the most serious offense. Nobody should stay in prison more than 20 years. Nobody. Somebody goes through Uvalde school and kills a bunch of kids, 20 years. Somebody goes to a graduation in Virginia, shoots and kills 6 people, 20 years. You go to a gay nightclub, you shoot up a bunch of people, 20 years. You rape a baby, 20 years. You rape 2 babies, 20 years. You rape 4 little girls, 20 years. This is what they're talking about. And we don't even know what's happening. It's not a coincidence that Governor Pritzker, when introducing the Safety Act, which, by the way, reads as though it was a cut and paste job from any one of those organizations, he used similar language. Poor black and brown people are unfairly imprisoned. They might have a small amount of cocaine or of drugs, he said, or they commit a low-level crime and they go to prison. And then he said, but you take some rich white guy who commits a crime and he walks into court with a suitcase full of money and he walks. They are all saying essentially the same thing. But is that true? No, it's not true. It's not true at all. Again, you tell me the person who had a small amount of drugs and they wind up in prison. They go to prison for life. It ain't happening. And don't believe the hype. None of the people with any of these organizations, the one group that I have not seen them focus on at all are the victims.